As Georgia plunges into political chaos, driving the country inevitably into the Russian sphere of interest, NATO tests its preparedness for a possible Russian attack in the Baltic region, and peace in Ukraine seems as distant as before. And to talk about it all, we're joined by former Latvian Foreign Minister Artis Pabriks. Good evening.
Good evening.
So let me start by asking about Russia. Now, should EU impose sanctions on the members of the Georgian government?
Well, it's not an easy question because we know that many sanctions do not work by itself. And I don't think that might change very much in Georgia. But obviously, we have to send a strong signal, first of all, to the current Georgian government that we are not going to tolerate such type of behavior if they want to have anything to deal with us, especially taking into account that Georgia was planning to join European Union. At least officials have been declaring that. And secondly, I think we have to continue to send strong signals that we are standing with opposition and we are standing with Georgian people. So if we want to discuss sanctions on the EU level, we must, first of all, understand what type of sanctions and are we all ready to implement these sanctions? Because if we are not ready to do this, then it simply will divide again us inside, because there might be some countries in European Union which simply might object. And secondly, I would not like to see sanctions which are just kind of makeup of action.
It is already becoming a bone of contention for the EU, as Hungary has already declared they will oppose any sanctions on Georgia. Now that Georgia has a new president, in your opinion, could this lead to an end of pro-EU protests or rather on the contrary?
I believe that at the end, Georgian future is in the hands of their own people. And my understanding is that at this moment, Georgian society is quite deeply divided, and Georgian opposition is not ready to give up, especially after this kind of farce about elections of Georgian president, a former football player, and basically a person which is very close to the current Georgian prime minister. So my guess would be that if Georgians really want, as a nation, to continue to be a European nation, they should continue these protests.
As simple as that. Now, today we've talked about major military exercises in the Baltic region taking place in Estonia, if I'm not mistaken. But how would you rate Latvia's and other Baltic states' preparedness for a potential conflict with Russia, especially in the light of the recently ended military exercises? It's almost 3 years into the full scale of Russian invasion in Ukraine, and I'm wondering whether NATO is prepared any better than 3 years ago.
Well, I would say that Latvia and the Baltic states and probably Poland and Finland and even Sweden, we are much better prepared for any type of conflict and for the defense of our countries than 3 or 4 years ago. Can I say it about whole NATO? I would say yes, in some way NATO awareness and awareness of countries have been rising, but it is far from being satisfactory, because we know that during these last 3 years, Russia basically reformed itself as a country into the wartime machine with all the flaws, because Russia cannot simply live without flaws. I mean, that country cannot be governed like Japan or Germany, sorry for comparison. But still, if we are looking on the streets of ordinary Western European cities, then public opinion is very far from getting ready to engage in any kind of conflict. We can see that large percentage of Western societies are not even ready to take arms in their hands to defend their freedoms. So, and they are members of NATO as well. many countries even do not reach 2% in defense budget. Defense industries are still underdeveloped and do not know what to expect in 1 or 2 or 3 years. So I would say it's better than 3 years ago, but it is not like it should be. And in that light, of course, here in the Baltics, I mean, we are doing everything we can in order to safeguard ourselves and to follow, for instance, decisions made in Madrid summit and in Vilnius NATO summit, saying that we should be capable to defend from the first centimeter, inch or meter. And this is why we also construct these defense lines next to the border. We invest in our security forces. We are also increasing support for our interior forces, including police and intelligence. But, you know, until our allies.
And you're also building a defensive line along the borders of 3 countries. But there's something else I'd like to ask you about. Polish Prime Minister has already excluded the possibility of sending any Polish troops to Ukraine to serve as sort of peacekeepers there after a truce or an armistice is reached in Ukraine. Now, what's the Latvian stance on the matter?
We did not have here an official discussion on this, and no ministers have been coming out with position. But if you ask my position, I would be rather skeptical because, I don't think that current war in Ukraine and Russian invasion is something where we can, at this moment, discuss peacekeepers. Because, first of all, peacekeepers for what purpose? To keep Ukrainians down, to stop Russians to go further into the Ukrainian territory? If so, then that simply would mean war between Russians and troops of our countries. So I would say that if we think about peacekeeper principle as a principle of deterrence, then the best deterrence is simply NATO membership in Ukraine. It is a maximum military support without any caveats or restrictions to Ukrainian armed forces. It is changes of Western economies to wartime economies. That would be deterrence. But to speak about peacekeepers, well, maybe if Americans or President Trump is speaking about European peacekeepers, maybe this is a method how to activize sleepy Europeans, those who are sitting on the balcony and just watching how others are doing the job to wake up. But I don't see how we can simply use peacekeepers in current circumstances.
Well, you can deploy peacekeepers only after a lasting peace has been reached. Artis Pabriks, former Latvian foreign minister, was our guest tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
And thank you for watching and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.